his machine quit working. The battery was at 50%. The car had problems. The magnetic problems tells me that had to have something like a big charge. Now, that would have been maybe a UFO hovering by it, above it, or whatever, and you guys might have all been abducted, and you guys don't even realize it.
Well, I believe some of us were, actually, and I can talk about that. I'd also like to comment on the bright lights with no sound that have been involved in what we've seen. That night, the night of August 27th to 28th, it wasn't at Talklock Lake, but actually on Mt.Adams, where there was a team of Ambition Pictures camera crew people and I forget who else, but I think there were some other people not with Ambition Pictures with them, but it was an Ambition Pictures camera crew doing this documentary filming. So they had a bunch of heavy camera equipment, and they hiked up the mountain, which took longer than usual just because of that. But it was that night, we think also around 3 in the morning or so, that Daniel, one of the other cameramen for Ambition Pictures on that team, he woke up and he said he saw a big, bright, flashing light above his tent. Now, the interesting detail about this thing that he saw is that his tent is green, and he said it was white light. So, now, of course, you could estimate that a light would be white if it's just really bright anyway, no matter what it's shining through, but that, I think, was connected to what happened to us. Now, I've recovered some of my memories from that incident itself, that missing time incident, and there's even been other stuff that has happened since then. Our, I guess we could call her the resident hypnotist, Mary Kennedy, has regressed not only myself, but recently Michael W. Hall about what we remember, what our subconscious minds remember of what happened. And if you want, I could get into that and then other phenomena.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's get into that, because, the show is all about UFOs tonight, and anything going, about any strange things pertaining to that, we want the listeners to know.
Okay. This will be interesting, because I'm very glad that I get to be your first UFO guest for this month and set the bar, because this case is very strange. So what I remember, I guess I can start with that first night of the main incident that we figured out. What I remember through the hypnosis, and even since then I've recovered memories, my body wasn't moved, my physical body, but I remember having left my physical body, basically in my astral body I left. And I was outside my tent. I recall having been told or somehow knowing that my physical body would be safe. And I think it was actually that there was a Sasquatch being that I saw with my astral body at our campsite that was the protector of myself and maybe other people who had their bodies at the campsite. And I remember, I don't think I was led by an entity. I was just attracted to go toward the road. There was a road that passed directly by our campsite. So I either walked or floated, or however that works. I went to the road where there's also kind of a clearing area where there's open sky a little bit more than the rest of the area. And it was there that there was a black triangle just hovering sort of a large black triangle craft, as big as could fit in that space anyway, or seemed to. And I don't remember how I got in there, but I remember just being on the road and then a second later being in the craft. And here's the interesting part. I don't remember a lot of detail of inside the craft, or at least not contour-wise. Everything was flat, mostly featureless. All of the tools and displays and the things they need in the craft are built into the walls. They hide in the walls, and then I think it's similar to self-activating technology, but if you need something from the craft, you can communicate with it through consciousness. I remember just doing this. It's so simple and fun. You can just communicate with consciousness. You can, from inside that black triangle, see everything outside the craft, either through monitors or somehow just be connected with maybe the craft itself, and you can see what's outside it. I don't know how their technology really works, but it's fun. And so on board, as soon as I got on board, I was welcomed by a mantis, a large green praying mantis bigger than a human.
Can you describe what it looked? Can you describe kind of what it looked besides as a mantis? Can you describe a little bit of the features and stuff like that? What was it wearing and all that stuff?
It wasn't wearing anything. It was just a large green praying mantis. And this is an element, an entity anyway, that's common in a lot of these UFO encounters and abductions. These praying mantis are fairly common, or somewhat common as an entity. Now, this mantis welcomed me. There was, I remember at least one, maybe more, maybe a few shorter grays on the ship. Of course, the light in the ship was fairly bright. It was diffused lighting, not like one light source, but just light coming from the walls. And so this mantis, this is just, remember, from what I recalled during the hypnosis, this was actually a bit surprising during the hypnosis that I recalled this, but this mantis told me its name, and I could say its name. Its name is Durian, and that was a different one than I was familiar with, because I was already familiar with one of the other mantis beings that is not on Earth right now. It's on what I call the satellite ship, which is actually the first thing I remembered before the hypnosis even. And so that night I actually went up off planet to the satellite ship. The regression took over an hour, and we didn't get around to actually getting to my off-planet memories, but I've recovered some of that myself naturally, or by myself. And I keep trying to remember what the ship looks like. I'm not entirely certain, but I keep feeling like it's a giant sphere or spherical in some way. I remember being inside it, and the whole time I was inside what I call the satellite, because it's like a giant mothership orbiting Earth right now, communicating with the other things on Earth from this one voyage I can talk about. But I remember what I call the command center, or at least that's the title I think is most appropriate for it. Large curved windows. I guess you can think of something similar to the inside of the Death Star command center from Star Wars, if you're trying to imagine this.
Huge.
Just colors were different. Yeah, fairly large, open space, kind of high ceiling, but not like huge high ceiling, but curved windows. Outside those windows, I could see the Earth and Moon itself, which I still remember fairly clearly. And I don't have a lot of detail of what happened in the command center. I don't remember any other beings in there except just throughout the whole time I was on the ship, I remember the feeling of having a taller being looking over me, which I think was the mantis that I was already familiar with. Her name is Kartana, and she had contacted me telepathically earlier in the year related to a number of visions and experiences that I had. I recently recalled, or kind of closed my eyes to relax and recall this some more detail of conversations that had taken place on the craft with, I think it's one of the gray beings, one of the shorter grays. His name is Amake, and he was conversing with me, asking me about my family and other things. I think he also told me about, at least from this memory, I seem to get more detail on the plan that they have, which I consider it to be from their arrival in August onward, kind of a new paradigm, and that's a 3-step plan. I'm not sure that I should go into heavy detail about that now. I guess I could highlight it. The 3 steps of it that I could title is called, or at least this is what I got from this memory, it's called propagation, which is actually their word, or at least a word they seem to have sent to me. I wasn't familiar with that word much before this incident. But propagation, which is partially physical for some of them on Earth, but also energetically and mentally propagating the idea of the existence of extraterrestrial life on Earth, and that has been interacting with Earth for millions of years. They want people to know that. They want people to wake up to that for what's coming after that. So there's propagation. Then after that is, I guess you could call it disclosure as the second phase. And the message I got from that is a little different than the government disclosure that most people are pushing for, or so many people these days are pushing for. This disclosure, they're not really concerned with the U.S. government or other world governments so much. These beings are, from my understanding, aligned with the Galactic Federation, so they have their own laws and their own procedures they can follow and morals. And so this disclosure is more like heightening the rate of contact with humans, increasing the rate of contact with humans, so that not only is there physical but also more mental contact with humans who are open, and even some who aren't originally believers. So that's to kind of build up to something like a critical mass of humans on Earth who are even open to believing in their existence. And then after there's a critical mass, or something like that, I'm not sure if there will be an event directly because of that, but the third phase of their plan, which I think will take years still unfolding, is something like integration, which will probably be a while at the current state of how the world is, but integration with humans and humans integrating with